The first part of this set of presentations is going to be hosted by Nujoom Al Ghanem. It's going to be in Arabic. For those of you who do not speak Arabic, please pick up the translators. Before Nujoom Al Ghanem starts, I'd just like to give a brief introduction to her practice. Nujoom Al Ghanem is a poet and a filmmaker with 8 volumes of poetry to date. She is regarded for her contributions to new forms of contemporary Arab poetry. She will be exploring Silsilat Al Ramad during this session.
أنا مقررة أتكلم بالعربي وأبغي أبتدي مع مقطع صغير جداً. في هذه المدينة أترك قلبي معلقاً على الجدران ليعرف المارة أنني أحببتها. Thank you for inviting me to this beautiful city and to be among you. الموضوع عن الممارسة الفنية من خلال النشر. وصادف أن في فترة الثمانينات كان في عندنا نشاط مختلف عن النشاط السائد. وحدث أنا لا أؤمن بالمصادفات، أشعر أن كل شيء يحدث في الكون لا معنى، ونحن لما نذهب إلى مكان في سبب لأن نحن نذهب إلى هذا المكان. لكن ربما اللقاء اللي حدث مع مجموعة من الكتاب والفنانين والمسرحيين في مرحلة الثمانينات كان لا أهمية، وبدأ في الأول كأنه مصادفة ولكن أخذ مناحي مختلفة فيما بعد. في جانيوري 3 حسن شريف الله يرحمه، وهو فنان تعرفونه تماما. أنا متأكدة أن كل اللي موجودين هنا في القاعة يعرفون من هو حسن شريف والليجاسي ماله. في هذا اليوم حسن عمل إعلان على أساس كانوا بيعملون معرض اليوم الواحد هو وعبد الرحيم سالم. في هذاك اليوم حسن طبعاً كان مو مجهز لهذا المعرض، بدأ التجهيز له فقط 3 ساعات قبل المعرض. جمع مجموعة من الأحجار من الطريق نفسه وحطها، وكتب ورسم بعض المربعات والخطوط على بعض الأوراق ونثرها في الطريق. عبد الرحيم سالم كان في عنده ساعة، وعلى الساعة كان في رمز الذكورة، وكان هذا هو المعرض. طبعاً هذا المعرض اللي يعتبر أول conceptual exhibition كان في هذا التاريخ. في هذا اليوم نحن التقينا بحسن، ودائماً أقول أن نحن وجدنا بعض، وبعد فقط عدة أيام طبعاً كان في consequences، في كانت ردود أفعال على هذا المعرض، وهذه مثل ما تشوفون اللي هي كانت بس بعد 3 أيام في وحدة من الجرائد الرئيسية عن المعرض اللي كان فيه الأحجار وكان فيه هذا. فبعدها فقط في اليوم التالي من نشر هذا المقال التقينا بحسن خالد البدور اللي هو بارتنر وزوجي، وهو شاعر وأيضا باحث، وشاركنا مع بعض في الكثير من الأفلام. ويوسف خليل، المرحوم يوسف خليل توفى هو أيضا، وحسن شريف وأنا سهرنا في هذاك اليوم وكنا نتباحث عن كيف ممكن أن نحن نخلق شيء ضد السائد. أن الساحة كانت في نظرنا في هذاك الوقت أنها كانت راكدة وكانت يعني تستهلك نفسها بأشكال فنية تقليدية. لا يحدث شيء لا على صعيد الأدب ولا على صعيد الفنون ولا حتى المسرح خطوات أخرى غير الخطوات السائدة والأشكال التقليدية، سواء في الأدب، سواء في المسرح، سواء في التشكيل. كان أن نحن قلنا أن ممكن أن ضروري أن ناخذ خطوة على أساس أن نحرك الساكن، أن نخلق حركة مختلفة في هذاك الوقت. قررنا في هذيك الساعة في الليل أن نحن لازم نطلع سلسلة، نطلع شيء ما كان. فتحمسنا، خالد كتب هذه القصيدة وحسن بدأ يعمل الماكيت مال النشرة، فهي احنا سميناها سلسلة الرماد. انتم ما اعرف شو بتسمونها، هذا ليفلت ولا بوكلت ولا، هي بس كانت مشروع في هذاك الوقت ولد، وكان كل حد منا ساهم مساهمة في سوري. حسن أيضا كتب قصائد تشكيلية في هذه النشرة، وهي كانت عبارة عن كلمات فيها الكثير من اللعب. He was very playful. نحن كلنا كنا كذلك، لأن وكان هذا بسبب أن كنا مو لأن ما كانت عندنا الإمكانيات أن نكتب مثل ما الآخرين يكتبون، ولكن كنا نبغي أن نعمل نوع من الهزة شوي أو كنا نبغي فقط نثير مشاعر القارئ اللي تعود على الشكل السائد. واليوم الثاني خالد البدور أخذ النشرة، عمل منها 20 نسخة وبدأ يوزعها على كل الجرايد. وحدثت هزة أرضية عقبها. نحن ما كنا we were very playful، كنا نتلاعب بالكلمات وبهذا، ووجدنا أنفسنا نحن أمام عاصفة، لأن المجتمع بالكامل، يمكن أنا غلط أقول المجتمع بالكامل، أنا أعتقد أن هي القصة قصة اللي كانوا في الصفحات الثقافية في الجرايد المحلية، كانوا هم يعتقدون أنفسهم هم الشرطة الثقافيين اللي بيدهم حفظ الثقافة العربية وديوان الشعر العربي والسلالة التاريخية للشكل الأدبي الذي يجب أن تظهر عليه الثقافة. كان يعني يمكن من حسن الحظ أن كان في هناك قلة من الأصدقاء، أنا أسميهم الأصدقاء مو لأنهم أصدقائنا، ولكن كانوا هناك أصدقاء للفكرة اللي هم دافعوا عنها وقالوا أن لابد من خطوات مختلفة عما يحدث. طبعا حسن كان راجع من بريطانيا، وهو كان مشبع من دراسة 4 سنوات درس فيها الفنون الجميلة المتقدمة. نحن كنا بدأنا نقرأ كثيرا عن الحركات الفنية في أوروبا وخاصة الدادائية، وكنا نريد أن نقوم بشيء مماثل ولهذا السبب أردنا هذه المجموعة أنها تكون تعتمد على أشكال مختلفة من سواء التشكيل أو المسرح أو الشعر. هذه أيضا واحدة من ردود الأفعال، أن هي الفوضى. أعتقد شو مكتوب فيها الفوضى، أنا ما أقدر أشوف هني زين، بس يمكن أنتم تقدرون تشوفون، اللي يقدرون عربي. منيرة ترومين تشوفين
ما أشوفه كله
شيء
الفوضى
إن يعني نحن أربكنا الساحة وخلقنا نوع من الفوضى. كنتي تقولين أن نحن قررنا أن نسوي معرض كنسخة أخرى من النشرة. في الحقيقة مثل ما يقول المثل العربي، الحاجة أم الاختراع. نحن عقب ما لقينا هذا الهجوم، وبعد ما أجانا إنذار أن أنتم ما يحق لكم أنكم تنشرون أي شيء إلا لما يكون عندكم موافقة من وزارة الثقافة، وزارة الإعلام والثقافة كان في هذاك الوقت، موافقة على النشر، لأن هذا ضد قانون المطبوعات والنشر. طبعا نحن بالنسبة لنا ما كنا نعتقد أن نحن نقوم بعمل يعني غير بعمل استثنائي أو بعمل غير قانوني. نحن فقط كنا نتصرف كفنانين، وكنا شباب، يعني ما لم نقرأ قانون المطبوعات والنشر، ولم يكن عندنا فكرة أبدا عن الخطوات اللي كانت يجب أن نمشي عليها. فلما منعنا من أن نطلع النسخة الثانية من السلسلة، قررنا أن يجب أن نجد حل، واقترح حسن أن نحن نقوم بعمل معرض، ونسمي هذا المعرض هو النسخة الثانية من سلسلة الرماد. وهذه كانت المسودة، هذه الدرافت اللي كتب فيها أن نحن راح نعمل النسخة الثانية من سلسلة الرماد، وراح تكون في معرض. لما ذهبنا سوينا أنتجنا أعمال فنية كلنا، ورحنا إلى سوق الشارقة الإسلامي، وجلسنا وحطينا أعمالنا وجلسنا وقررنا أن نحن ما راح نتكلم مع أي حد، أن نحن فقط راح نجلس ونخلي الناس هم يتفاعلون مع هذه الأعمال. طبعا في هذه الأعمال كانت عبارة عن هذا في سوق الشارقة الإسلامي. أنا كانت عندي مجموعة من اللوحات، وكانت عندي سكالبتشرز أيضا يمكن 4 أو 5. حسن استمر في الحصى ماله، ياب مجموعة من الأحجار اللي هي تمثلنا نحن. عطانا كل واحد 3 أحجار وحط عليهم شريط بلون، وكانوا الناس بدأوا يجون يقولون هل هذا فن؟ انتوا اللي تسوونه فن؟ وقلنا لهم يعني إذا أنتم تعتبرونه مو بفن، بس نحن جينا على أساس أنه هو فن. المهم أن السكيورتي جانا وقال لنا لازم تروحون، لأن أنتم ما عندكم تصريح أيضا أنكم تكونون موجودين في هذا المكان. فقررنا أن نحن أوكي لازم نفكر في أن الاستمرار. يعني بدأنا نحن بعد نكون excited، وحسن هذا النسخة على أساس الثالثة من الرماد، وبعدها استمر طبعا الضغط علينا من الجهات الرسمية، وإلى درجة أن صار في عنا خوف، يعني أن المسألة أصبحت جادة ويجب أن نحن ننتبه. فهذا الشكل اللي كان فيه عفوية طبعا قلنا أن أوكي إذا هم يبغون يطلبون منا أن نحن نقدم شيء أكثر جدية، وهذه هي محزنة هذه المسألة، لأن إذا كان عندك جموح وإذا كان عندك جنون فني جميل، أحيانا تتعرض إلى التدجين أو إلى التهديد المجتمعي. فقمنا قلنا أوكي خلينا نسوي شيء أكثر في جدية أكثر. فواحد من الزملاء شايفين الانتقالة من هذاك الجمال هذا إلى طبعا الرأس في اسم يعني أيضا رمزية في وكنت مدعوة في هذاك الوقت إلى مهرجان المربد في العراق، والتقيت بشاعراء مهمين هم سرقون بولس، صار المرحوم سرقون بولس، و صلاح فائق، شفت سيف الرحبي وآخرين اللي هم كانوا من الشعراء الحداثيين المهمين في هذاك الوقت في العالم العربي. وكلهم وافقوا على المساهمة بنصوص لسلسلة الرماد. كانت المفروض النسخة هذه الأخيرة هي تضم هذه الأسماء، وكانت هذه هي النصوص. طبعا هذا النص اللي هني موجود أيضا لزميل وصديق لنا هو علي العندل، اللي الساحة لم يعني تشهد له الكثير من النصوص، ولكن هو وعادل خزام والهنوف محمد شكلوا مجموعة أخرى بعد مجموعتها، أعتقد اسمها جماعة الأرانب القزحية أو شغلة شيء يعني. وبدأوا هم أيضا ينتجون، طلعوا ما أعرف كيف قدروا أنهم يقدمون نصوصهم، لكن نحن ما قدرنا أن نستمر للأسف. والضغط الكبير اللي صار علينا بعد هذه التجربة خلتنا نرجع، لأن يعني واحد مثل المرحوم يوسف خليل طلبوا منا أن يتوقف عن التعامل معنا، وقالوا له أن هذيل شباب مجانين، وهو من السودان، هذيل شباب مجانين، أنت شو تبغي فيهم أنك أنت تعمل وياهم؟ فمسكين انسحب من المجموعة يعني بعدها فقط بيومين، وبقينا نحن الثلاثة، لكن انضم لنا أحمد راشد ثاني. لكن كل هذه المحاولات كانت يعني محاولات بيننا نحن على أساس أن نحاول أن نقدم الأشياء اللي كنا نحن مؤمنين فيها، الشكل الآخر اللي كان يعنينا في هذاك الوقت. نحن ما كنا نبغي نكتب قصيدة تقليدية أخرى، ما كنا نبغي نقدم لوحة في الإطار التقليدي المتعارف عليه اللي لوحة في برواز، وأعتقد أن حسن عبر عن هذه المسألة أكثر من مرة، وفي الفيلم اللي أنا عملته يا بعد يمكن 30 سنة من مشاركتنا مع بعض، أن مو بشرط أن العمل الفني يكون في برواز، مو بشرط أنه يكون تحت سبوت لايت، ممكن أنه يكون تحت الضوء الطبيعي. كنا نبغي نخطو هذه الخطوات، نبغي أن نسوي شيء يكون يعبر عنا، عن أفكارنا، عن شو نبغي، مو بشرط أن حتى يعني ما كان القصد أن نبغي أن نعلم الآخرين شو لازم يسوون. هذا كل شيء تقريبا.
شكرا.
وإذا في عندكم أسئلة، إذا في
بغيت أشوف إذا في أسئلة قبل ما أنا أسأل أسئلتي. سؤال واحد من عندي قبل ما نكمل، أو إذا في أسئلة in the audience please let me know if you have any questions. أوكي خلاص أوكي. Switching languages back to English. I would like to take this time to introduce Elaine W. who works between the realms of time-based art, urban practice, and design, using multiple vocabularies to explore the micropolitics, subjectivities, and alter possibilities of an intimate networked production. She will be discussing display, distribute, which is a thematic inquiry, distribution service, now and again exhibition space, and sometimes shop, founded in Kowloon, 2015. Thank you.
Hello. I really hate public speaking, so I have to start by telling you this story. Okay. How to start? Actually, we had really nice talks yesterday, and thank you, actually, especially to Ala and Maha for inviting me. I feel very honored, and to Warehouse 421. But so yesterday, Sylvie talked about friendship, and I think that's something that doesn't get talked about often enough, which is so important, actually, if we're wanting to talk about forms of collaboration and possibilities for support in a sphere of ours that is extremely precarious and marginalized. And the funny thing is, I wanted to combine this idea of friendship with also the inevitable question of economy. We also talked a lot about money and how, yeah, we want to make money, or at least survive and sustain the projects that we're working on. And so thinking through this idea of friendship and affects and economy, I realized is actually something that is really important to the whole practice that we have been working on. And if you think about, for example, the idea of circular economies, it's a way that we can think of supporting one another, mutual aid, especially in this environment where there is a so-called sphere or a scene of people who know each other. But then at the same time, how do we consider these circular economies or these circles and networks that we're working with in an open manner so that the circle stays open and able to invite other people to participate? So this is just a funny insert I wanted to put in, actually, with all the talk about the virus going on lately. And this is, I found in a book by Silvio Lorusso, called The Entreprecariat. And his idea is bringing the terms, the entrepreneur and the precariat together. And that sort of resonated with me very much in terms of, yes, how we are all working as creative practitioners. The idea of the freedom that we have maybe as artists and in pursuing our own self-organized ways of production somehow is a point of pride. So we actually identify with being parts of the precariat, which is a condition that is also much larger than us. And then to go back, I wanted to start in a way, somewhat autobiographical way with, this is an artist-run project space that I ran in Beijing from 2008 to 2013 with some other people together. And actually, I thought today that very interesting comment from Nasser about how the advertising became, the lack of advertising sort of alienated a larger public from his journal because they thought it was too serious. And that actually was a really interesting logic because somehow what we have been doing since then and up until the project that I will lead into is actually playing with that idea that business is actually, it's the open circle. Because nowadays, especially in a place like Beijing, where the question of, for example, public space is highly contestable. What is a public space? Is Tiananmen Square a public space? Technically it is, but no, it's not. So then what becomes the most public space that people feel comfortable to use? It's a shopping mall, actually. And so the idea then with this space was to rent a storefront. And it's a really simple maneuver. It's just using this architecture of the store as a way to allow a certain openness to the public. So the practice that I've been involved with is very much a socially engaged work. It was very community-oriented. And these are some of the activities that we did along with basic things that artist-run spaces do, like screenings, talks, different kinds of events, rooftop gardening, cooking events, everything. But one of the most important things that began from this time was starting various forms of self-publishing. So we did also newspapers, a community newspaper. There were poetry readings, reading groups, things like this. And also we decided to start publishing our own journal, which is at the most basic sort of desire was a way to document activities that are temporal and not able to be seen by a very large public, and you want to be able to document these things, but also offer a platform via text and image for other people to contribute to the ideas that we are talking about, the different kinds of discourses that were related to this neighborhood and to things that are happening in Beijing at this time. So in the beginning, we managed to put out the first journal, and it's such an exciting thing when you've never put out a book before, to all of a sudden have this thing that you've worked on, and I think a lot of you can identify with this, like, wow, you've put this thing and it's printed and there are 500 copies of this, and it's so exciting, and you've done all of this, you've got contributors together, edited, slaved over it, and then you have these boxes of books and oh, well, how do I get them out there and share them with people? And then you realize there's a whole other project that is involved with trying to distribute and to share it. So the artist in this point becomes also a salesperson. You become your own admin. You become your own accountant. You become your own wrapping person. I mean, all of these things we were doing ourselves. And this incurs a lot of other obstacles, which a lot of you might also know about, working with bookstores, how when you're just one small publisher, most of the time, you can't find a distributor. Bookstores, if you don't have an ISBN, all of these kind of issues that I don't want to go into, but I think you know what I mean. So now I'm going to jump. I'm going to jump to Hong Kong. So after being based in China for 10 years, I moved back to Hong Kong. And I got involved with this collective called Display Distribute. And somehow this is perfect for me, having worked in China for so long, because a lot of the work is based on this kind of tentative relationship between Hong Kong and China. So Hong Kong is part of China, formerly a British colony, but handed back to China in '97. And somehow we are under a kind of rule known as one party, two systems, which is full of all sorts of contradictions, but also therefore has a lot of breaks and fissures in it, which allow different kinds of trade, different kinds of legal relationships. Chinese people can only stay in Hong Kong for 7 days, whereas I can stay indefinitely in China. There are all sorts of very weird things that are part of, I guess, the identity of this region. And initially, Display Distribute, the name is actually also just taken from a direct translation of this particular shop. And it's actually just a pop-up model. So this actually is something that you'll find probably all over the global south, like pop-up stores, which are basically empty storefronts that can be rented short-term for anybody to sell anything they want. And because of the border relations between China and Hong Kong, there are all sorts of low-end goods filtering through. Surplus goods from factories in China, bootleg items, and these shops are rented by the day. You call a number and you say, I want this shop on this day, and you go there, it's empty, it's not even locked, you just put your stuff and you can sell it for the day, and then you take it out when you're done, or you add a lock yourself if you rent it for 2 days. So we were basically using this as a form of research inquiry to observe and document all the crazy things that were passing through this particular shop. Everything from bras to life insurance to mobile phone covers. And this tracing, basically these networks, as a form of looking at that relationship. Gray economies, parallel trade. This was also like a kind of research that we did where we're actually going through parallel trade of buying products in Hong Kong and then selling them in China, and the courier actually makes a little bit of profit from this and this is also because of tax exemptions in Hong Kong and things, foreign goods that are not as easy to get in China. And so that leads to where the books enter into these kind of networks. So this is the series that one of the imprints that we are producing ourselves, and it's actually pirate books. So this is also a model that you will see probably all over the global south as well, like students who go to copy shops and they take their textbooks or whatever, and you can get them photocopied so you don't have to buy these crazily expensive academic books. And we've curated it in a way by actually inviting practitioners to dedicate a book to us that has been important for their practice. So the people that we invite range from activists to artists, curators, writers, and then they give us either the hard copy of the book, which we will scan with their notes in it. Those are very nice, those editions. Otherwise, just a PDF. And then we make a new cover for it, and then we sell these, trying to keep it basically at the same cost that we were having them produced, which is extremely cheap, actually. So what is included in this collection is a wide range, actually not determined by us. So certain things like, I don't know, Walter Benjamin. There's a Korean philosopher named Byung-Chul Han who has written also about pirating as a philosophy and a culture. There are zines from some of the people dedicating their own work, things like poetry. And so bringing this kind of culture of display distribute together with the books, we're also still thinking through questions of distribution. How do we get it out there? So we started participating in book fairs and finding ways also to bring somehow this kind of grassroots, more DIY approach of the local peddler, a street seller, into this environment. This is what I call a corporeal reading performance, where you actually put the bookshelf on my body, and it actually creates a very different interaction in terms of the audience who comes and wants to look at books, and also serves as a selling platform. And then we also began a web shop. And this web shop then offers the very simple way for us to distribute our books, but also then to work with other publishers. And this is where the friends come back in. A lot of these people, yeah, they are friends. But there are people, some are not friends, but they become friends through this process of talking with each other about the books and exchanging different experiences about similar, perhaps like gentrification issues actually happen the same in Taiwan and Hong Kong, or activists working in Japan actually do have a lot of things in common with activists working in Yogyakarta. And so we're trying to sort of circulate these forms of knowledge via the books, but via the ways of working, then you're also kind of hoping to enhance somehow the effective relations between the people involved. And so with the web shop, you said already just before, we decided to turn the logistics itself into a project as well. So on our web shop, there are no shipping fees at all, and we made a very simple rule for ourselves that there would be no use of post, and it would all go person to person. And this is, again, a very silly, probably not very efficient way to scale up, but it offers the chance to turn the value systems of, for example, a regular courier like DHL or something, which is all about time, speed, efficiency, but to substitute those values with other things like slowness, the encounter that happens between a stranger and another person, like a publisher. Then very often he might be the courier himself, and he brings the book to a reader. And this is a great opportunity then for a discussion to happen. And all sorts of random other details, which is also very important to the project. So, for example, I mean, yes, we are logging basic metadata in terms of, okay, this is the time the book was ordered, and this is the time the book was received in this place, but what is important within this kind of metadata and what is important within these journeys? Actually, sometimes it's nice, random other detail to know that, this person was wearing a flowery hat, and they happened to meet this other. Actually, there's a story I can tell, and this is from. We number these logistics routes. So this is from HQL 205, which was ordered on December 6, 2017, and it was received about 1 month later from Guangzhou in the south of China to Shanghai. And the courier, she was taking the airplane, and when she was sitting on the plane waiting for the plane to take off, the I don't know, what do you call the intercom? They called her name. And it didn't register with her at first, and then she realized, oh, they're calling my name and they're asking. And so she went up to the front and they bring her her bag. And she didn't even realize that she lost her bag, but they bring her her bag. And they told her, yes, you left it after you crossed the X-ray. And this was and her books were in this bag that she was carrying for us at the time. And this became a really fascinating thing because how did they know where she was on the plane? Because when you go through X-ray, they're not really tracking, you know, they didn't know which flight she was on. But somehow, via that point to this point, through the surveillance cameras or whatnot, they did very quickly find her. And so this becomes a very, maybe it's a minute and unimportant detail, but for us, this is something really important to all these journeys. I don't have so much time, actually, so I'm going to, this is the website. So basically, all of these details are logged in with photos, sometimes video even, and the different stories attached to all the journeys. And I'm going to skip very quickly through this because I'm over time now, but this is a catalog that we produce, which is, on one hand, it is also using the sales mechanism of a catalog, inspired by mail order catalogs that you don't see so much anymore these days. But it basically has all the information of the books that we are distributing, but expanded to become a reader or a journal in and of itself. So we've invited other writers to contribute texts, and then putting in scans from some, or photographs from some of the publications so that it becomes a narration in and of itself. And we've distributed this in various kind of institutions, and also trying to expand really upon the text. It's not only, the book is not only the book itself, but a series of activities and formats for introducing them to publics and to sort of reacting to the space around it in different ways. So this is various projects that we participated in, where this the third edition of this catalog was actually never printed at all. And we declared it published by virtue of completing a series of events and activities during the time of this exhibition. Can I add one more?
Yeah, go on.
So this is the most recent edition of the catalog, number 4. And this one comes out of a funny story of an exhibition at Parasite, where in the logos in the back of the catalog of their this exhibition had a logo for G4S, which is a company, I don't know if you guys know it, but it's a global security company who's involved, actually, they're kind of like rental police, rental cops, who take care of things like everything from being, the security guard at a bank to also being security for refugee camps, for London Olympics, and they've been involved in quite a few controversies for excessive violence and very kind of questionable practices all over the world. It's a huge company. And we were wondering, why is this logo on a Parasite exhibition? Parasite is a kind of independent art space in Hong Kong. So what's the relationship? So we kind of dug a little bit deeper and found out that they actually also do art logistics. So they're art transport. Somehow within the global mechanisms of all these things they're doing, they transport artworks. And we thought, oh, this is very weird. And we made some kind of dissent about this, and we wrote to Parasite and tried to discuss this with them. And in the meantime, via another channel, we got invited to be in the next Parasite show. So we took this opportunity to say, okay, we want to make a little bit of noise or like make it known that this is problematic, but also at the same time we are doing logistics. Why don't we take care of the logistics for the Parasite show that we are in? So that's basically what we did. So moving from the books, using the same manner, point to point, of volunteer couriers to transport these artworks for the show. And then in the meantime, we also got the opportunity to produce the 4th issue of the catalog. So that's it.
Thank you. Thank you.
You didn't sound nervous at all.
Do you have any questions? Is that a question in the back? No? All right.
I remember that you had a question.
I have a few questions, yes. I'll start with you, Elaine. A quick question. I'm curious to know how language informs these publications. Are they in English? I know you spoke about like the sort of like cross-pollination between different countries. So how do you maintain that language? Like how does language play a role within binding all of the different countries?
I mean, you could see it as fortunate or unfortunate that English becomes our common language. So we try to do everything bilingual. Like the catalog is Chinese and English, but for publications that we have that are from Japan or from Indonesia, for example, we will include the information about that publication in its original language. For the pirate books that we make, for example, if the person dedicating it to us has given us a Chinese edition, and if an edition is available in English, we will put them together as a pirate copy. So it's actually better than a pirate copy because it's a bilingual edition. For certain things, maybe we've tried to do some translation, but we just don't have the capacity to translate a Roland Barthes book, for example, or something like this.
And you translate from English into Chinese, or is it vice versa?
For small things, we've done Chinese to English.
Okay.
And in the case, for example, that there's something that we cannot translate, but we would like to offer it in multiple languages, then we will look for a related text. For example, there's one that is from Jacques Rancière in English, and that particular book has not been translated into Chinese yet, but we found a Chinese scholar who writes a lot about Jacques Rancière. So then we've included text from this scholar in Chinese together with it.
Very interesting. Thank you. One more question before we move on to Nujoom. How do you document the interactions that take place when you're making these shipments? And do they inform the publication in any way, or like what is the role of the interaction between the guy who's receiving, or the person who's receiving, and the person who's sending the piece?
It's different in every case,
Okay.
but it's actually also up to the courier who's doing it. So we explain to them how the project works, and then some people get really excited and they really start taking a lot of photos of their whole journey, or some people have written poems or even like made a kind of song out of something that happened along the way. But other people, not so interested, or they just want to help but they don't care about all this other stuff, and they would just give us the minimum information, which is also okay.
Fantastic. Thank you. Nujoom, I have a couple questions to ask you. With regards to the second conceptual exhibition that took place, the idea moved from the publication into a physical exhibition. Was the exhibition themed? Was the publication themed to begin with, or what were you exploring within these iterations of the publication?
The first publication was quite spontaneous, as I said. Yeah. It was born in that moment, and we tried to, like to write at the spot, to write something. Each one of us had to do something, and Hassan was busy with the design of the publication. Now, the second one, we were quite prepared because we had to produce art objects to present them in the souk. So we spent time preparing those objects and making them representable to the audience. I don't think the theme was an issue at that time. We just presented whatever that was available.
And how would you say, I think it's very interesting because I feel like in this day and age in the UAE, the art scene is very separate. Like artists are very separate to writers. Writers are very separate to filmmakers. And they exist in their own sort of spaces. How would you say or could you sort of give us a little bit more about how all of these different factors came into play and how they influenced the artwork that was being produced at the time? I mean, I know that there was no separation. Like the idea of a conceptual thinker could have been a painter, could have been a writer, could have been, an actor, let's say. But how did you influence one another in that way? And were people strictly what they were, like الكاتب كاتب وبس?
I mentioned briefly that we wanted to present something that is complete and comprehensive because we were coming from different backgrounds, I mean artistic or literal backgrounds, and we wanted to form a group. And each one of us had his and her contribution to that project. So we were trying to fit that into that publication. Now, afterwards, of course, we were with Hassan most of the time. Hassan was with us, and we started producing artworks, and Hassan started writing poetry. So and it was kind of cynical, or I don't know.
Unfortunately, we are short on time, so I will have to close the questions here. Thank you very much.
I was going to read something before we close.
Please do.
So just give me this moment.
Please do.
I see you. You were gathering shells and starfish and giving new names to the water and sand so they might preserve the tone of your voice. You forget the intrigues of the waves. The waves are advancing hells, but fear is your compass. Follow it. Follow it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Wow, that's so nice.
Thank you.
I'd like to introduce the second part, which introduces Dani Arbid and Nasser Alzayani. Dani Arbid is a writer, filmmaker, and entrepreneur. He has worked as a writer, photographer, and videographer in Beirut, Istanbul, and Berlin. In 2018, he founded Barakunan GmbH, a publishing and media startup based in Berlin, where he published his first two books under the name Zahreddin. You, of course, also saw his work in the exhibition. Nasser Alzayani is an American Bahraini artist practicing in Abu Dhabi. His practice expresses an obsessive documentation of time and place through drawings and writings, as well as found and cast objects, incorporating themes of both factual and fictional archaeology. His most recent works explore lost landscapes and their preservation through memory. Thank you. We will begin with Dani.
Yeah?
Yeah,
Okay.
that'd be great.
Hello. Yeah, I don't have a presentation, so I'm just going to tell you a little bit about Barakunan. So a few years ago, maybe 6 or 7 years ago, I had come to the realization that as someone who studied politics, didn't really understand art that much, but understood the politics of art, that the only way for me to really engage with the kind of manifestation and creation, I needed to have some sort of purpose, I would say. And so I was walking down the street in New York. I think it was like the first or second time I visit, which for someone who like grew up in Abu Dhabi and then went to university in Beirut and never really like saw this like massive construction of just culture and commerce and capitalism and everything that like is New York City, I was obviously like, I was overwhelmed with information. And I was searching for something that could give me a sense, me and a lot of my community from Beirut, a lot of artists and intellectuals and writers and stuff, something that could like kind of be like an umbrella, like something that we could kind of put ourselves under and then create from that sense, and it's funny that Nujoom, yeah, you were mentioning the Dada influence on you guys. And I was rediscovering a lot of the literature that we had studied in school. And Dada was something that my English teacher had given me. She'd given me all these like Dada books. And at the time, I was like, this is really cool, but I don't really see how this is going to help me, because I was writing like very direct poetry or like love poems, And then I was going through like bookstores and looking at like used books and looking for things, and suddenly I found like this whole section of Dada, and it was all just so much stuff, like fake video criticism and real video, and then performances and fake performance scripts and all these things, and I realized just this ultimate freedom. And then when I looked into the Dada movement, I realized actually so much of it was actually a response to fascism and like the emergence of this kind of uniformity that the European cultures were moving towards, which obviously we now know historically, where that eventually led to. And so I was walking around I was like, I need just a term, I need something, And then I don't know how it happened, but I just thought of this word. I was like coming up with words, and then Bara happened. And I just started to write this poem, like Bara, and then the first sentence was, Bara is your identity spelled backwards, being like Arab, Bara. And it really was like this moment, it's kind of like something flipped, and I realized seriousness and playfulness, and they need to like work hand in hand in order to give people this malleability and the fluidity that art can really give you, And so then, for a few years, this was something very personal that I was just extremely invested in. And me and like a bunch of my cohort, we were all like doing different things, but we were all practicing a medium, And I was writing a lot and working on film, and there was like musicians and designers, and we were all just kind of studying. And then a few years ago, we came together. There was a friend of mine who had a magazine that he wasn't really happy with, and he wanted to create something new. And then there was me and a bunch of other artists who needed like someone to give us money to do something. And then we were like, he wanted to make like this audio culture magazine. I told him nobody cares about audio culture in a magazine. You can just go online and like find out whatever you want about a DJ in like 6 seconds. So why would someone wait 4 months to read an interview with someone, But what you need to do, and I was just like, I think artists have to be very manipulative, to people, especially the people closest to them, until they like reach a level where then there's like more people to manipulate, And we were like, what you really need to do is invest in us to create a new civilization. And so he was like, okay, that doesn't make any sense. How is that profitable? And we were like, well, in a way, like Harry Potter is a new civilization, you know? It just doesn't like exist on Earth, but it exists in so many people's minds and their hearts. Like there are more Harry Potter fans than there are Lebanese people, you know? So that made a lot of sense to him because he thinks in terms of like commerce. And he's like, okay, yeah, like a lot of people. So we were like, okay, we need to create a fictional universe. And we were sitting there like, okay, what's the fictional universe? Like, how are we going to make this fictional universe? And then suddenly, everyone like turned to me and they're like, you've been working on Bara like your whole life, right? And I was like, yeah, Bara, like it's a religion, it's politics, it's art, it has everything. I have like 10,000 pages, you know? And we're like, okay, so Bara is the source, and now we're going to do something new with it. And we're like, okay, fine. And then, so we created like, I think 2 systems that so far have kind of worked for us. One being completely like direct political speaking, and another being completely alternative reality, alternative dimension kind of approach. One of them, the alternative dimension approach, the way we sell it to people, especially people who don't read much and don't really care about literature, is like, okay, so imagine like Marvel or Harry Potter, but for adults, you know? And then the political thing, we're like, okay, imagine like manifestos, but for like people who don't really read literature, but they want like something to hold on to. But essentially, they work hand in hand. So I'm going to tell you a little bit about like the last year of our lives, because we actually were doing this, and we were doing this together as a community for a while, and then we kind of all came out last year. This I mean, we thought that there was going to be this like massive earthquake, and the whole world was going to change, and it probably has. You guys just haven't realized it yet, but it was the beginning of a process, you know. So we released 2 books last year. One of them being a novel from this alternate dimension, and another one being a kind of manifesto that encompasses all the kind of main like key terms. And to take you back just a step, when we first sat together, and when I say we, I'm talking about a community that shifts between like 5 people and 50 people sometimes, because like Beirut is a very small place, and it's almost like everyone's an artist, because unemployment is really high. We're all very creative people. You're very social people, and it's really easy to be an artist and be social and work together and do things, and there are very low expectations in terms of like financial returns, and everybody lives with their parents, so it's fine, you know. And then, so the first thing we did when we wanted to put together the concept was like go back like 800 years. And we were like, okay, what was like the golden age of our region that everybody in the world thinks about, you know? And we started to obviously go to like Baghdad and, you know, Damascus and like the Islamic golden age, you know, and these things. And we started to like look into these myths that we have been told about these places, you know, and this kind of like romanticization of all this. And what we realized is that what you need to create something, this like momentum, is you need to create a kind of nexus. And you need to give people the belief that something's happening, and then it needs to have a really good design, you know? And none of us are designers. None of us were designers. So then we were like, okay, like we need designers, you know? And Beirut is full of designers. So we basically went to like 15 different designers, and we went like step by step through each designer, and they were all like giving us something. And it was kind of the beginning, like we would go to them and we'd be like, we want to create a civilization. And the moment you say that to a designer, they obviously know exactly what you're talking about, because design is completely like language-oriented, system-oriented, and it's all based on like these like core principles. So they're like, okay, what you need for a civilization is you need uniformity of language and style and design. And so we started to work with these kind of like, how do you translate ideas of something new and radical and revolutionary onto paper and make it feel like it's bigger than it is. So we wanted, like, if you look at a Bara piece, it would seem as if it's been around for 800 years. It would seem like it has existed since the Islamic Golden Age, you know? That was kind of the premise. So through that process, obviously, you did design, audio, visual, text, started to put things together. You start to realize, like, okay, we need core products. You know, we need things that people can be like, we can. I mean, we gave so many of these pitches to people, like, this is what we're doing, and everybody would like walk away confused. But then when you give people a book and then you explain it to them, then they start to like realize, like, okay, I should read the book and then I'll understand more, but it makes sense, kind of. So we were like, okay, we need to make these books. One of the books that I'm going to tell you a bit about, it's called The Story of Sister Sara Shamlan, The Stranger. And this story it takes place in this kind of thinly veiled alternative world, very much based on our like Middle Eastern principles and past and whatever. And it doesn't really, we wanted to make like a fantasy novel that we could sell for $300 million to like Warner Brothers, but none of us are really good at writing fantasy, so it just ended up being like kind of mystical fiction and like a bit romantic and whatever. But we see it as a kind of bedrock of like, let's say like the founding myths of a civilization, you know? And the entire world has this like past, present, future manifestation around it, you know? So when you read it, you're like, they're driving cars, but they're riding horses, and you don't really get it. They have like really advanced like fighter jets, but they also fight each other by like mystical, like looking at each other's eyes and like doing things to each other's souls. So it's, and the thing that I've like realized over this whole process has been that our entire idea of who we are is based on these like fabrications that have been given to us over time, especially as being like Middle Eastern. I think we have no control over our history anyways, you know, because we've been, let's say, colonized, and we've been recolonized, and then we've colonized ourselves through our, let's say, like military dictatorships or revolutions or failed whatever, and we're constantly creating a new fabricated reality, you know? So for us, like the reality that we're talking about, if you give it to someone who lives in, let's say, like New York, I mean, what do they know about the Arab world, you know? So for them, like, they have fabricated their own reality about the Arab world as well. So we kind of want to create this idea that anything that we are as Arabs is a misconception, and so we can be whatever we want, you know? And to do that, to be whatever we want, I think we have to take advantage of the moment we're in right now, which is that we're in like a new paradigm, you know? And this new paradigm has probably been created because of the last 20 years of just technology and shifts in geopolitics and stuff. But what that gives us is it lends us this ability to like work together on creating something that we haven't really had the means to do, which is to fabricate a culture. And then when we went back to the golden age that we were like looking at and there's like this. In Western criticism and art history and stuff, they always talk about, even like Amin Maalouf talks about this, like they always talk about like how the Islamic world disappeared culturally like during the Renaissance, you know, and that like it hasn't been awakened since, and there's like been like sporadic like outbursts of things, and there's art communities and stuff, but it like who has controlled civilization, you know, and who controls civilizations today? Whose cultural hegemony do we live under? And I think we're coming towards an age now, and obviously we've seen it, we see it on social media, we see like people feel like their own cultures are threatened in the West, and then also like there's like the progressive movement and people who feel like it's our time as well, like people who are different, people who are come from immigrant backgrounds. And so we feel like it's a very important time to tell these fabricated stories and to speak them as truth, and then to really start to like believe in our fabrication and to use that to consolidate realities and to consolidate like a Nigerian Afrofuturist past history future thing with like a Levantian thing with, you know, like something from like Southwest Asia or something, like kind of where do these things fit? And alternate literature is really interesting because you can basically do whatever you want, but then at the same time, you have to have a beginning and an end. And the story that, and the book you can find it in places and see it, it takes place in a place that is very much dear to me because it kind of has to do with I don't know if anyone lived here when Abu Dhabi was didn't have a movie theater, but I did. And it's amazing to see what people can do when they put their mind on something, and especially growing up in Abu Dhabi, versus Dubai, we always had this Abu Dhabi-Dubai comparison, and Dubai sprouted, and Abu Dhabi was slow and studying and growing, and our stories begin, and I'm not going to go into the literature because I'll just talk forever about the story. So I'm just going to tell you a very brief detail. There's a girl. Her name is Sara Shamlan, and she's living in an occupied territory, and she flees with her family, and she ends up in a migrant camp, and she's given a choice. Either she can join this global resistance movement of mystics who are intent on freeing these occupied territories, or she can wait to see what happens with her future. And obviously she takes the decision to have agency rather than to wait, And she basically enters this conspiratorial world where she has to go to this place called Asur, and Asur is very much based on this kind of the world that we've experienced in the GCC, which is a kind of these places, coming out of the desert, that have just been fabricated purposefully, not you don't have to build on build on build, you're not building on a past, you actually have the ability to look at a space and to design it, And when she gets to this place, she realizes that actually the entire place is built on this myth of this source of ultimate power that this family has, and it's all based on these mystical traditions or whatever. And her main job is to take okay, I don't want to give it away, but her job is to basically accompany someone on a very sacred mission in order to unleash the full potential of this place. And so it's kind of an allegory on the job we need to do as individuals to look at a place that we can fabricate and then transform it towards something that will actually benefit, And we see it as the founding myth of the civilization that we've created, which is Barakunan. Yeah. I could stop there because I don't want to
That's
go
perfect.
On. Yeah, okay.
Thank you.
Yeah.
All yours, Nasser.
All right. As Munira introduced, my name is Nasser. I'm a Bahraini American artist living and working here in Abu Dhabi. And before I show any images, I just wanted to talk a little bit about how I put together this presentation. And I was looking at the work that I had created over the past 2 years and trying to find ways to frame them and think about them as these different ways of, publishing, work, and whether it's text or audio or video or my, master's thesis, but also looking at them as ways when we make art and we make things public, how do people interact with these works? So should work. Oops. And just a little bit of background about the works that you're going to see. I'm very interested in ideas of memory, both collective as well as personal, but also ideas of archaeology and how we begin to learn new information and begin to preserve it. And so as we go through these works, I think it's also important to note that most of what you'll see is all about telling stories, but it's also about asking questions. So one of my earliest memories, at least one of my earliest, most vivid memories, is seeing newspapers stacked in my living room that my dad used to order every single day, and more specifically, British newspapers, around the time that Princess Diana died. And I remember seeing these images of her on these front pages for what seemed like months, and it seemed like it was an endless stream of almost the same news stories. And as I began to, recollect and try to piece together this memory, I realized that, what we might consider as fact, that someone has died, eventually becomes this very controversial, and in her case became this conspiracy theory where you're always trying to maneuver between the fact and the fiction of what actually happened. So as I began to write down my own, recollections, I found that the newspaper became almost the ideal format to begin to record, present, and exhibit these memories. For one reason is that, newspapers are dated, and they reflect a very specific time and place. But also, you think generally, maybe not so much today in this era of fake news, but back then you would assume that what you read in the newspaper was real. But with these memories, everything begins to occupy this strange place between fact and fiction. And I think that's really where the work begins to come alive. As I also said, I have an interest in archaeology, and this came out of, childhood visits to museums on field trips, and in Bahrain, seeing these ancient tablets in museums, and then considering today that and questioning whether these tablets were in fact the first form of a publication, as a way to record and distribute this information in the public realm. And so I began to look at this and really try to translate it into our contemporary world and document and record issues that we can relate to and that we have memories of. So on the image on the right, you'll see these tablets that I created that tell the story of a natural spring in Bahrain that has gone dry in my lifetime. Counterintuitively, instead of being made of stone, they're made of sand, in a way to reflect the dryness of the place, but also to begin to think about how these objects age in time. So how do these new artifacts begin to tell the story of the drying of a spring? But also, how do these artifacts begin to fade over time, just as our memories of this place do? These were a series of screenshots I took on my phone when I was on a trip to the Metropolitan Museum in New York. I made it a very specific point to go and visit the museum and try to research beforehand what artifacts exist that originate in Bahrain. And as I did the search on my phone, I found out that there was only a single artifact that existed in the entire museum. And I thought, the number was very significant, but it was also really interesting, the fact that, even in the name, there was a question mark. And so there are these moments in which you can enter into the narrative of and histories of these pieces where you find that, the story is incomplete, and you can begin to insert your own personal narratives, like mine, going on this pilgrimage almost to visit this piece. And then I was trying to figure out ways to document this experience. And through these screenshots, I think they presented not only the information that was known and that I had discovered along the way, but also documented my time and journey through the museum. So if you see there's evidence such as the battery percentage on my phone that changes within these screenshots. And then thinking of ways and questioning how these methods of documentation may exist in the future. This artifact is displayed in a very typical archaeological display in the museum. So what happens to these screenshots as technology advances and they become obsolete? And so in this work, I was taking the screenshot and making them into their own artifacts and displaying them in that manner. While I was doing my master's at RISD, I took this class on alchemy. And in this class, we were looking at various alchemical texts. And one example was this recipe that I'd found in this manuscript that detailed the manufacturing of a pearl. And this recipe claims if you use these materials such as pulverized stone, which is mica, or gum of tragacanth, cow's milk, Tyrian wax, the white of an egg, and also mercury, which I didn't use. But if you follow these instructions, you would eventually make a pearl that will excel the natural. And I thought this was a really interesting recipe that I found specifically because I come from Bahrain, and growing up, pearls are such a huge part of our identity and culture and tradition. And as you enter Bahrain, you even see it on all the customs boards that it is illegal to bring in cultured pearls and sell them as a way of protecting the local economy and tradition. And so I was thinking of ways in which I could, well, first of all, try to make this pearl from this recipe, but then if I did succeed, how would I be able to take it with me back into the country? And if so, would I be caught? So how could I almost create like this disguise for myself and smuggle it in? So I created this piece, which includes the actual pearl that I made. And putting on this disguise to go through customs, as many people do as you go through international borders. But also looking at this parallel between these two works, the pearl is fake in my piece, but it is actually also fake in the original Vermeer because it's exaggerated and it's extremely large, but the model is also not a real person. So, as I began to think through this work, it became clear to me that, there's a lot of fiction in things that we believe to be fact. And then there's, times when, a text or information reveals a truth that completely changes your perception of something you thought you may know. This is a piece that came out of my studio one day. Louder. And finally, I'd like to end with the back page of the newspaper that I created, where there's this full page ad by the Hilton Hotel in Bahrain, advertising its new Oasis service, catering in the desert. And I think this is a really good example of where fact and fiction go hand in hand, because the image is real, but the ad is fake. And as I created this ad, I was, I think, at a time where I thought this was really ridiculous and funny, but having come back to Abu Dhabi, I realized that this is very much real, and that's something you can ask for at a hotel and probably not get any confused looks. But I also just want to end by questioning, how all these different forms of publications can begin to tell a story that that exists in this kind of liminal space in which you're not sure of what is true and what is not, but bringing your own narrative, you can begin to kind of find your own truths and your own stories. Thank you.
Thank you. I would like to open it up to the audience. Any questions?
Hi. Ooh. My question is actually to Dani. I think this might have come up yesterday, but I'm wondering about how you look at language and translation, because I know you print mostly in English, and yet you're constantly talking about identity and our own fictions, and it's a very fraught topic. And I just wanted to hear kind of what are Barakunan's thoughts and thought process on that topic?
I mean, yeah, it's definitely a very important question. So many artists we know from the Arab world, work in English, and or French or something like that, and Lebanon specifically from the artists that I know as well. I think it's really a huge part of it's part of the concept, the fact it represents why Barakunan exists, the fact that we work in English, we're fabricating a reality, maybe we're fabricating a history and a future because we actually don't know the truth, and it's amazing that we're kind of talking about fabrication, because I think we just understand that we live in we are molded, by our education, and history is not something we know that we do not have a grasp of our history, and it's because our education, and it's not just here, I mean in the US as well, in Europe, obviously, there's so many issues that are just not addressed, and so language is such a huge part of that, and it's also a struggle to reclaim it. So a lot of people we work with work in Arabic, for example, and we have this complex, as people who can't work in Arabic, we just admire them so much, It's you're the real Arab, and I'm a fabrication. But at the same time, I'm just a representation of history and reality, but on practical terms, we have collaborated in German and in Arabic, and in the future when we have more launches and more collections and things like that, we definitely want to incorporate not just Arabic into it or German, because we're very heavily invested in being in Berlin, but just languages in general, and I think it's just part of the whole process.
I guess, sorry, I'm hogging the mic, but part of it is because, my first language is Arabic, and I don't know if you consider yours is or not, but I guess I'm wondering, because sometimes I've heard a lot of people talk about how there are certain ways of communication that are easier in your second language, or in English specifically, so I guess that's kind of where my question is coming from.
Well, also, I mean, just another thing is, when people have read our English, it's not British, They're just well, it has a lot of strangeness to it, the sentences, the words, the flow, things it's and it's because it's really weird to write characters 20 characters that are all Arabs, from 15 different cities in the Arab world, you're hearing them speak Arabic, but you're writing in English, you know? And you're hearing interior monologues, first person, you're not hearing them speak in English, but because maybe we're just so used to flipping between the two, hearing our mother speak Arabic, but we internalize it as English, like, then it's very automatic. It comes out in its own way, you know? Yeah.
Thank you.
Hi. I got a question, but also I will say something about the language. I don't know what you think about not speaking with the language, but also thinking with the language. I mean, if I think with a certain language. It's not like I think and then I produce it in a language and say it. I think in Arabic and I think in English and I think in... And sometimes I have the same wish of something to express, but I don't think it the same with different languages. And I could probably maybe say stuff that people will interact very differently. But to be more serious with my question, Dani, have you been approached by future dictators to propose your work as a myth-making?
Have what?
Have you been approached by dictators that have aims to conquer land and produce myth to nations?
Not dictators, but democratic socialists, yes. Actually, like, there has been kind of a wave of interest, especially in what's happening in Beirut right now, and people like us who are interested in dealing with that kind of how do we galvanize emotion around integrity and around creative practices, you know? So actually, yeah, like, we are very interested, we are political people, and we are very interested in translating the myth-making into reality, you know? And if you believe in the myths that you're presenting, and you believe that they come from a place that either brings goodness, if you want to bring goodness of some sort, you want to, then, I mean, you should engage, you know?
Sure. Maybe it can make money also.
I mean, of course.
Any other questions? All right, I think we're running a little bit late, so we're going to have to wrap it up there. Thank you very much.
Thank you.